It's that time of year again. Paris Fashion Week has just come to a close, which means that we have a brand new Hermes collection to dissect. They have just presented their latest fall winter collection, which not only included some new bag styles, but also some new textures that are favorite Hermes bags will be offered in for the upcoming fall winter season. And as always, I would love for this video to become a conversation rather than just me talking at you. So please jump in and share your thoughts in the comment section. But without further ado, if you'd like to hear my first impressions of some of the Birkin bags that walked the runway and also some of the new styles, including one that might just be dethroning the constants, then make sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe down below if you haven't done so yet, and keep on watching. I'm not giving away any secrets when I tell you that this collection, like most, was actually inspired by the Maison's equestrian heritage. It really only takes following Hermes for a few seasons for you to start noticing common patterns, reoccurring details and shapes and fabrics that you'll see time and time again, and this collection was no exception. As always, they have exquisitely incorporated interesting details into more classic, kind of predictable shapes and silhouettes, and the collection was filled with rich, moody, dark shades like chocolate brown, charcoal, and my favorite, black, with an occasional pop of green or burgundy. And the collection was overall really quite beautifully curated, but it wasn't anything groundbreaking. They used the same silhouettes, the same details, the same shapes as they always do, with really slight tweaks and changes in textures and colors. Now today we are talking about the women's collection, but if you would like me to do a similar video on their men's collection, let me know and I can definitely do that for you. Their men's collection for fall winter was presented earlier in the year, but if I had to pick two pieces that were my favorite from the women's collection other than their bags, I would say that I really liked some of their new bomber jackets, which again is nothing groundbreaking, but there was an incredible nylon bomber jacket which had this almost sculptural, exaggerated padded shoulder detail, and I feel like it was slightly cropped, or at least I know it would be cropped on me. And if you know me, you know that I love a cropped jacket, so that was something that I really liked. And then they also had a similar bomber jacket shown on the runway in leather with a really cool quilted shoulder detail, and I really love how they styled them because a lot of the models wore the same pair of gloves, which was this pair of fingerless gloves, but the gloves actually ran up all the way on the forearm. But instead of the entire glove being made out of the same fabric, one half of the glove, so the hand part was made of leather, and then the upper part was actually made of, I think, cashmere. It had this really cool ribbed knitted detail, which I loved, and I loved how they pulled this glove over the sleeve of most of their jackets. I thought it created a really interesting silhouette. So if these gloves actually make it into production, this is something I would love to add to my collection, because I could actually see myself wearing this over some of my cashmere cocoon coats. I think it would add a really nice interest, and I again loved how they pulled it over different textures like leather and even that nylon bomber jacket. So those were some of my favorite pieces from the runway collection, but as you probably know, the majority of these pieces will sadly never make it into production. But if the bomber jacket does, it's definitely something I would love to try on. And without further ado, let's move on to some of the bags, starting with an iconic Hermes bag, one that has been around for decades, but it's been getting more and more attention, which is the Bolide bag. The Bolide bag was once again shown on the runway for fall winter 2026. It is a bag that was actually designed for the very first automobiles, which is why they had this really nice curved shape. It's kind of reminiscent of the Alma from Louis Vuitton, but I believe the Bolide came before the Alma did, and believe it or not, the Bolide was the very first bag to ever feature a zip closure, so it was definitely designed as a practical, easy grab and go bag. And I feel like more and more people are appreciating this understated design. On the runway, this bag was shown in quite a few different sizes, including some of the larger sizes, which would be a size 30, but we also saw it in the mini size, which is definitely the most popular. And as always, it was shown in some very interesting textures like Volinka leather, which is definitely for the true Hermes connoisseur. But the Bolide is definitely not a bag that should be underappreciated. It's an incredibly understated but beautifully crafted bag for those who are looking for a more understated creation from the house, but one that will last a lifetime, because this is definitely not a style that will ever go out of style. It comes in several different sizes, including some larger duffel bag alternatives, all the way to mini sizes, which is definitely the most popular. And speaking of bags that we've seen before, the Della Cavalleria bag was once again shown on the runway, this time in the so-called Elan figuration, which means that it is slightly more elongated. I think people these days call these bags the East-West bags, means that they are slightly longer. As you probably know, I am not usually a big fan of these elongated bags. I also prefer, well, do I prefer the original Della Cavalleria bag? I think this one might be growing on me. So if I had to pick one now, I would actually opt for the Della Cavalleria Elan bag. It's not something that is on my wish list. It's not something I would personally want to add to my collection. But if I had to pick between the two, if one of you guys asked me which one I would recommend, I actually might say to go for the Elan version, which is quite surprising. But both the original Della Cavalleria bag and the Della Cavalleria Elan share the same inspiration. They are inspired by a manual from the Hermes archive and a scarf. The manual pictures and descriptions from the manual were first translated into a scarf design, and then that scarf inspired this bag, which again features several equestrian sort of inspired details. So you first of all have that slight curve at the base of the bag, which is inspired by the curve of a saddle, and then the jewel-like clasp is actually inspired by a horse bite. I always thought it was a stirrup, but now I know it's actually a horse bite. And these bags come with an adjustable shoulder strap, so they are definitely quite functional if you're looking for a really elegant, structured, but kind of understated bag. Not because this bag will not add any value to your collection or to an outfit, but it's not as obviously Hermes as a Constance bag would be. This is a great one to look into, and it's not overly expensive for an Hermes bag. I believe the Della Cavalleria Elan currently retails for 5,600 euros in Europe in a ton of different shades, mainly neutrals, but you can definitely find it in a pop of color every now and again. But on the runway, this bag was shown in some beautiful sort of foliage inspired shades, which I think would add a beautiful rich texture to your collection. But the Della Cavalleria bag is certainly one that has my stamp of approval. Moving on to the first of the 4 new shapes that was shown on the runway, starting with the new bucket bag, which kind of reminds me of the Picotin in an interesting way, except this bag features a longer handle or strap depending on how you want to carry it. It has this really interesting sliding mechanism that allows you to either double the strap and just carry it as a handheld bag or as a shoulder bag, or you can actually pull the strap out and use it as a crossbody bag. It has a similar, more structured base to the Constance and a large, I guess again, equestrian inspired buckle, but this buckle also reminds me of the kind of clasp that you'll find on dog leashes. In fact, Pai's Hermes dog leash has the very same clasp on it, which I get it. I'm sure it has some sort of an equestrian inspiration, but in my opinion, it's just not the most refined. I feel like there are so many other clasps in the Hermes archive that they could have gone for instead of this one, because this to me just doesn't feel the most elevated and the most delicate. In fact, it feels quite harsh and utilitarian, whereas that's not the vibe I am getting from this bag. I feel like there is a Rebecca Minkoff bag that features a similar clasp, which, you know, there's nothing wrong with, but a Rebecca Minkoff bag does not cost you Hermes prices. And while I'm sure that this bag will be exquisitely made, I think based on the pictures, to me it seems that it's made of Togo. Again, the details just really don't, I just don't love the details. I feel like it's something that could have been refined a little bit more. And while it looked incredible on the runway, it definitely fit in with the whole equestrian vibe. I think this would be quite a difficult bag to style if this bag even makes it into production. If it does, it's not something that I will be running to the store to try on. But if you feel like this is a bag that would fill a gap in your collection, if you love a really, really simple bucket bag, this is something that will be around for fall winter. This next bag I would love to hear your thoughts on, because it's certainly something that feels quite on trend, but I think by the time this bag actually makes it onto shelves, it might be a little bit outdated and passé. I feel like we have been seeing these 90s inspired, really thin, almost non-dimensional shoulder bags. I feel like this whole trend started with the re-release of the Prada mini nylon bags that they've been doing for years and years at this point. And it's a little bit late for Hermes to jump on this trend. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's just my suspicion. But they are coming out with a new pochette that features a really beautifully crafted round handle. And you might be sitting at home thinking, why is he going on and on about the handle? Well, let me tell you why. First of all, there's not much more to this bag. It is an extremely understated, simple crescent shape that's going to be available in a handful of different leathers and colors. And it has an ever so subtle metal H buckle that actually attaches the handle to the body of the bag. There's really only one way for you to carry this bag, which is under your shoulder, well, depending on how wide your arms are, because the strap isn't that long. So if you have thinner arms, it's certainly something that you will be able to put underneath your shoulder. Otherwise, it's going to be a handheld bag for you. But what makes this bag a little bit more Hermes, other than the H buckle and some of the heritage leathers that this bag will be available in, is the tubular handle, because it features a very similar handle to what you'll find on the Birkin, which, if you're familiar with the construction of the Birkin, you'll know that the handles are by far the most time-consuming details on the Birkin to craft, which is the detail that this bag was crowned with. So I have no doubt that this bag is going to be quite pricey, as you would expect from Hermes, and I don't think you'll get enough bang for your buck to justify the price. I do not know what the price is just yet. I would assume, and this is just my educated guess, that it's going to be somewhere between $4,000 and $5,000 depending on the leather. I think it's going to be available in either goatskin or heritage leathers, which both of those leathers are on the more expensive side compared to things like Epsom or even Togo. It is a fun bag. I'm sure that all the people who love Hermes on Instagram will go crazy for this, because it's definitely really Instagram preferred. I feel like this is a style that people on Instagram tend to really enjoy, but I don't know if what you get justifies the price tag. I'll definitely keep you posted when we find out more about the price. But if you like these sort of bags, if this is a style that appeals to you, just know that it's launching really, really soon. And at the end of the day, if it's a bag that you can use and take advantage of, it is certainly worth the money. But I would love to hear your thoughts on this particular bag in the comment section. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, it is quite rare for Hermes to surprise me, but this style is not one that I expected. Hermes actually showed two different vanity cases on the runway. They have very similar features. The difference is the size. So they had a smaller, more compact, narrow hard shell vanity case on the runway, as well as a larger one, which I'm not really sure if the idea is that you would actually carry these as a handbag or that they were meant to promote their beauty line. I do think that it's probably to help them push their beauty line more. If you would like to find out why I think they are working so hard on promoting their beauty line, I will make sure to have a video linked up here for you where we discuss all of that, why we are seeing more and more of these beauty lines popping up. But I think that the idea behind these is that you would, of course, predominantly use these as an actual vanity case, not to say that you could not carry them out as a bag, similar to the Nice from Louis Vuitton, which so many people carry. I'm not even sure if they still do at this point, but there was definitely a point in time when you saw so many people carrying the Nice vanity case as an actual handbag. And of course, you could do the same with these new vanity cases from Hermes. They definitely have a vintage archival feel to them, including the clasp. The clasp is actually featuring their so-called electrum finish, which electrum means that it combines two different shades of metal in one. It's something that we looked at and talked about in some of my recent Hermes vlogs, because it is something that has been popping up, especially on mini Kellys for some weird reason, but it's not a new idea. It's something that has been around before, but Hermes is really pushing these electrum details, this time on a new H-inspired metal clasp on these vanity cases, which I think this is really meant for the Hermes connoisseur. And speaking of this electrum detail, there is another bag that actually features this very same H-inspired clasp, and that is their box bag, which is Hermes' take on a flat bag. It kind of reminds me of slightly of Chanel's flat bag. It's almost like as if the Chanel flat bag and the Constance bag from Hermes had a baby. Not necessarily in how they look, but more in what these pieces would add to your collection, because they're definitely more of this east-west style shape, similar to the Della Cavalleria Elan, compared to the Constance. Not that the Constance doesn't come in an Elan version, but it's definitely much better known as the original Constance bag. So it is slightly more elongated, and it has a similar flap detail to the Chanel classic flap, with a more utilitarian, more user-friendly, effortless look. So I don't think that you'll get this bag if you love the Chanel classic flap, or not that if you love it, but I don't think that this bag would replace the Chanel classic flap in your collection, or it would add the same facet to your collection, but it would be quite comparable to the Constance, except it feels a lot more understated. The proportions are slightly more delicate with this bag because it's more elongated and slightly more shallow, and it's definitely not nearly as in your face as the Constance bag would be. It features an adjustable shoulder strap, which I guess Hermes is listening to us, because it's something that we have been complaining about for years and years and years, that we want bags with adjustable shoulder straps, and we are seeing more and more of them, including this one. This is a bag that, as the name suggests, will mainly be available in box leather in some beautiful neutral shades. I feel like this shape is quite feminine because of how narrow and elongated it is, but I think it is a beautifully understated and refined bag. I would love to know what you think in the comment section. Is this something that you would like to add to your collection, or is it something that you would consider playing around with? I don't think it's the most groundbreaking, most innovative shape. It's not something that I would suggest that you go out of your way to get your hands on, unless you feel it's something that would fill a gap in your collection, but it's certainly something to consider if you like a really easy, effortless, and beautifully crafted handbag. And actually, speaking of those vanity cases, it's a bag that we have looked at before. It's something that is being introduced for this current season, but Hermes is actually doing a Kelly clasp inspired hard shell, almost trunk bag. It's slightly reminiscent of the Petite Malle from Louis Vuitton, except with Hermes's iconography. It features this large Kelly-inspired buckle on the side, which they are doing in black box leather for this current season, and for full winter they're going to be doing it in white with some studded details, which is quite interesting. I personally much prefer the original trunk bag that they are offering in black with gold hardware. But if you love the Kelly bag, but you're looking for a more elevated, perhaps clutch bag like shape, this could be quite an interesting and certainly unique piece to have in your collection. And with that, let's move on to some of the new Birkin bags, which are not technically that new. They are the classic Birkins that you probably know and love, if you love them, but in some interesting new finishes and textures. First of all, we are getting some larger Birkin bags in Chèvre, so in goatskin, which is quite unique. Chèvre Birkins have certainly been around, but we have not seen them in quite a while, and they are making a comeback for fall winter. It's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. Chèvre bags tend to be on the smaller side because goat leather or goat skin has a very obvious spine detail, which some people will like, some people will dislike. And the reason Hermes doesn't usually use this leather on larger bags is because there's no way of avoiding that spine detail. So it's certainly something that will be a prominent feature of some of these larger Birkin bags. So it's an acquired taste, but if you love Chèvre, Chèvre is known for being an extremely soft, supple, hard-wearing leather. It's hard-wearing because it is quite not stretchy, but there is a little bit more stretch to it compared to other leathers, and it's also known for absorbing color beautifully compared to leathers like Epsom or even Togo. Different hues and shades tend to look a lot more saturated in Chèvre compared to other colors, but you have to like a shiny, more waxy finish because that's just the name of the game when it comes to Chèvre. But Chèvre Birkins are making a comeback after many years. And then we are also getting some Birkin bags in felt, which is not the first time we are seeing a Birkin in felt, although the HAC tends to be more common in felt. But we are getting a Birkin 25 in felt, which is actually quite similar to the Go Team Birkin 25, which I think we talked about in a recent What's New from Hermes video of mine. It's a special edition bag that was introduced for this current season, and it was inspired by American football culture and varsity culture. It kind of pays tribute to varsity jackets, and now we are getting a more understated, more stripped down version of that bag because that Birkin featured some patches and even a large pom-pom detail. So if you were not a fan of those more funky, playful details, but you just like the Birkin bag in felt, you'll be happy to see that it is coming for fall winter in a smaller 25 size. I think it was shown in gray and maybe green on the runway, with the corners of the bag being reinforced in leather. And interestingly, on the smaller Birkin, it was really only one half of the bag that was made of felt, and the upper part of the Birkin was reinforced again with Swift leather. So it was not only the flap and the Sanglons that were made of leather, but also the upper part of the Birkin. Whereas when it comes to the Birkin 35, which is also going to be available in felt, it is the entirety of the bag that's made of felt, and it's only the corners that are reinforced with leather, and the accents are made of Swift. But other than that, the entire bag is made of leather, which is just a small detail. But I wonder why that is. It must be for structural support, or it must be because they felt that the opening on the Birkin 25 is quite narrow and the felt would wear a lot more as you go in and out of the bag. One thing that I have to say about Hermes's wool felt is that it's not the most hard wearing. I have owned several different pieces from Hermes in felt, and I can tell you that they peel and fray like you've never seen it before. So these bags, they definitely add a very beautiful, unique texture to your collection. They certainly feel quite cozy and just snuggly for fall winter. They are not things that you'll be able to wear on a really like regular basis, even though the corners are reinforced with leather, and so are some of the accents that you'll handle most often. So things like the handles, but just keep in mind that it's not something that you'll be able to use on a very regular basis. But if you love felt and it's a texture that you would like to add to your collection, they are also doing the Picotin 18, the Picotin Pocket 18, I should say, in felt, with some leather details, which will add a similar facet to your collection, but at a price that is a little bit more digestible, considering that these bags are not the most hard wearing and long lasting. Are you adding any one of these bags to your wish list? Are you hoping to unbox any one of these new fall winter bags from Hermes? I would love to hear your thoughts. Or is there perhaps another piece that piqued your interest? Or even if you're not planning on buying any one of these, I would still love to know what you think. Please let me know, and while you're down there, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't done so yet. I really appreciate you being here and watching, and I cannot wait to see you back here with a new video really soon.